Okay, we are back with episode number 15 of the Move Worthy podcast with Jenny
and Lauren.
And we are still into this first-time homebuyer series. I'm calling it a series at this point because this is going to be number 3, part 3 of a very important topic, a very massive, I guess, kind of topic.
A lot of information.
A lot of things to go through. We have talked about first-time homebuyers in general, what to expect when showing properties, looking for houses, getting pre-approved, pre-qualified, what your fees might look like. We talked about getting accepted. We talked about giving deposits once you're under contract. I think we touched a little bit on inspections, but we're going to dive in right here at inspections and really talk about what that looks like. Like when you do an inspection, what to expect, how many inspections do you do on a property. All of the things.
All of the things.
I mean, obviously, I think we touched on too, not waiving inspections.
And the importance of that.
And what that looked like for buyers back in 20 and 21 who did that.
Yes.
I think we even touched on a case that we learned about the other day where the inspections were completely waived, and at a certain point that buyer had no out. Cash sale, not conditioned on appraisal, not conditioned on inspections. Where's your out as a buyer?
Right.
So I guess that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. Where's your protection?
Right.
Yeah.
So every house you purchase, you should have an inspection period built into your contract. Your realtor will advise you on that. I typically do 12 to 14 days.
That's what I do.
In this market.
12 to 15 days. If it's a 4-week close, I'll do 12 days. If it's longer, I'll stretch it into 15 days. Yeah. But that for a first-time home buyer that does it, according to contract, it's called a due diligence period.
Yes.
But that is the period where we would do all of the inspections, quote insurances, do any type of research. If you have any questions about the property, look to see if there are surveys on file. That type of stuff happens in your due diligence period. And if it happens outside of the due diligence period, you're not protected.
Right.
But as far as inspections, I mean, I almost always recommend a full home inspection with a termite as well as a video pipe inspection. Some buyers, which I have a first-time home buyer I'm working with right now, wants a bed bug inspection.
I have never
done it. No. So I was like, okay, well, my first thought, and agents learn too. My first thought was, well, we're not purchasing any of the beds and there's no carpet in the house, so I'm not really sure. But she did a lot of research on this, and the bed bugs can actually live inside the cracks of the walls, like between the baseboards and the sheetrock. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes. So
This is going to become a thing.
This is going to become a thing.
We're making it a thing right now.
I know. So I did some digging, and Lajani's Pest Control, they actually offer a free bed bug inspection.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And when I called, she was not shocked.
Not surprised.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this happens?
Like,
and she was like, oh, yes, ma'am. This happens all the time. I was like, wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as agents, we absolutely take our clients' needs and concerns into consideration when we're talking about what inspections to do. We ask them, what is this? Do you have any concerns? This is what I recommend, but if there's any concerns that you have, we can,
definitely address that.
Your home inspection's kind of your overall inspection, and those can tend to shed lights on some things that maybe we didn't see.
That need further
inspections or investigations. So I always like to jump on scheduling my inspections right away.
Me too.
Because if I do have to get, professionals out there to quote something, or have to get another inspection to go more in depth for an issue that a home inspector found,
Right.
we have time for that.
Yes. I think that's one of my pet peeves. It drives me crazy when I have to wait 3 or 4 days after an acceptance for someone to schedule an inspection on my listing.
Yeah.
Because as soon as everyone signs and says accepted, and maybe even sometimes when I don't even have it in front of my face, but everyone's agreed, kind of
You're scheduling
it's coming, I'm texting my inspector, hey, what do you have for the next week and a half?
Yeah.
And then I'm getting that done right away.
Yep.
Some of the other inspections I just want to touch on, because we've done them throughout the past and they are available. I actually had one done on mine chimney the other day. If their house has a fireplace, there are options for a chimney inspection.
I've had a stucco inspection.
I've had a stucco inspection, a pool inspection. Those are extra things that definitely are out there, definitely available. We have people who do those. But yes, definitely bed bug is a first time, but there's other ones that, yes, we've heard of in the past. Yes, there's people out there who do them. AC inspections, roof inspections. Video plumbing covers your plumbing, and then your general home inspector is going to also check for plumbing issues too.
And they're also going to check roofs and
They're
AC.
also going to look, exactly.
But they may say, this doesn't look right, or I think
Have
you should
someone-
contact a professional.
Yes, I agree. So cost for inspections. Maybe we touched on that the other day. Termite inspections roughly $125 these days.
Yeah.
Video plumbing around the $250 mark.
Yes.
I think it
$200 to
depends on
$250.
square footage, obviously,
Yeah.
too, and maybe location, depending on where that person's
Or if
coming
there's
from.
a detached
structure.
with plumbing, that's an additional cost sometimes.
And then your general home is roughly
Between $300 and $400.
$300 and $400. Okay.
Yeah, just depending on the inspector. Some things that first-time home buyers don't know, and a lot of first-time home buyers are using, federal-backed funding. They require WDIRs, which is a wood destroying inspection certificate, and good agents will know that that's something, but that's also an additional charge. Some inspectors charge like $125 for a WDIR.
Well, that's what. When I say termite inspection, I'm referring to that WDIR. It's $125.
Yes.
Yes.
Most home inspectors do include termite inspection, but they don't provide a WDIR without that extra expense because it's a huge report.
Right. And it's there's a guarantee on that report. I think for 30 days or whatnot.
Yes.
Those inspectors are held to a certain guarantee if something is found within 30 days. And I've had someone recall one of those years back on a house in Lakeview.
Oh yeah.
We had a termite inspector inspect it, said everything was good. Within 30 days of them closing and moving in, it was found that there was live termites. The inspector missed it, so he treated the house for free. There are guarantees that go along with those, and I think that's another reason why they're probably so expensive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like another, an extra insurance.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
But there's so many spectrums of inspections, and I think it just goes with whoever's purchasing the home, whatever their concerns are, what the general home inspection may show, and it can go from there.
Right. So what do you do once you find all these issues, or not?
Right.
As a buyer, you have an option to ask for repairs.
Yeah.
For anything that was found in the house. You can ask for a dollar figure if you want to take care of those repairs post-closing. Or you can accept it in its condition and move forward and okay with all the things. Now, there's a laundry list of things that are going to show up on that report. I think
that's the most overwhelming for first-time home buyers. When they see a 60 to 80 page report, they're like, oh my God. But I think, it's important for agents, to guide their first-time home buyers to not get worked up because these reports are overwhelming.
Yes.
But not all things in these reports are bad. Some are just telling the buyer, hey, this is what you have.
For your information.
This is for your information. This is something that needs to be maintained.
Yes.
This is a problem.
Right.
There's different parts of the report, and I like how some inspectors they'll they'll summarize and they'll categorize it. So like the green things are just for knowledge. The yellow things are deficiencies, but don't necessarily have to be addressed. The red things are hazardous.
Hazardous, right.
You know, that really should be addressed ASAP.
And a lot of the inspectors are going off code today.
Yes.
So each year
sure.
when the codes change, they have a new list of things that have changed. So if your house was built in the 80s, it was built to code in the 80s. So there's going to be things that are different from the code in 2025.
Doesn't mean it's wrong.
Doesn't mean it's wrong. Doesn't mean it's hazardous. While
right.
some of them are, I'm sure. But this is one that stuck out as a new agent. And even still, when we inspect houses that are 80s, 90s, is everything vents into the attic.
Yeah. Yes.
Nothing vents outside of the attic, it seems.
Yeah.
So that pops up in reports, and everyone's like, oh no, like I want this to vent through the roof. Like, okay, well that's going to take a roofer cutting a hole in the roof, extending vents through the roof. Like sometimes these things are not necessarily easy to do.
No.
And at that time when those houses were built, that was okay, but it's not okay today.
Yeah, it's not okay anymore.
I feel like when I first started, that came up in every single inspection we did.
Yep.
And I just finally got to a point and I said, every house on this street is like that.
Yes. Yeah, you start to learn the ages of the houses and you start to set your clients up for, hey, I know this is going to come back on the inspection. Just letting you know this was a very normal practice for
this age
home.
this
age home.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. There was another one. I mean, GFIs are a big one, and those are easy fixes. I mean, for someone to go in and change some GFIs, I think even when I go to list houses, I'll do a walkthrough, and I'm like, hey, just to prepare you, they're going to call this out. They're going to call that out. If you would like to go ahead and get those changed, you can. If you'd like to wait for the inspection, you can. I think those run like $30 a pop.
Yeah.
Another one that really drives me crazy is the arc fault breakers. So I sold it. At the time, it was 50 years old. It's older now, obviously. But at the time, my first house that we sold was like 50 years old.
Yeah.
Didn't have a lot of grounding in the outlets. The buyer wanted these arc fault breakers. Well, what happens in a 50-year-old home is anytime anything happens, those breakers trip.
Yeah.
So while you would like to get it up to code and to match everything else, then you have these breakers tripping all the time.
Right.
I mean, we changed them because that's what they wanted, but I would not have put them in my own house to have to constantly go back and forth and fix those.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
That
was another thing that was conducive to the age of the house.
Right.
You know, I would be totally shocked if a seller was just like, okay, yeah, let me do all of this for you.
And those are expensive.
Those are very expensive.
The arc fault breakers are expensive, and when you're talking a whole house worth of arc fault breakers, like that gets pricey.
I think it's important for buyers to know that while, you know, you might like the biggest and best and most up-to-date things, if it's not faulting, you can't.
Right.
I mean, you can.
You can.
But you can't expect a seller to be like, hey, sure, yeah, you want this? I'll go ahead and rewire this whole panel just because you want that.
Yes.
That doesn't happen often.
No. And what we're really looking for is double tapped wires, fire hazards, things that are really, really important. And I've let my buyers know, I've let my sellers know, hey, you can expect this. Hey, let's go through this list together. Tell me what you have concerns about and we can talk through this. We can get advice from professionals before we go in and make that repair request list. And so time-wise, you do your inspection within your inspection period.
Yep.
Then you make your repair request. Then that seller has 72 hours to respond.
And in that time, the seller can do their own research as to what something would cost. You know, because if a buyer's asking for a credit for all of these repairs, they have the right to go get that estimated. If they're willing to give a credit, they have a right to get their own estimate, and they have a right to say, hey, no, it's only going to cost this. We're willing to credit you, but we're only crediting you this much.
Right, correct.
They have that option for sure.
And then once the seller tells you what they're willing to do or not, then the buyer has 72 hours to decide whether they're okay with it.
Yep.
I always say if there's something that really is important to you, we can try to kind of go back and renegotiate that, or you walk away.
Yeah.
I mean, those are your options at that point. And it's okay to walk away.
Yeah.
If it's something that really bothers you and you're not sure, and moving into a house that has this problem, you're afraid to fix it or don't want to fix it, that's totally fine. Like, people back out of contracts all the time due to inspections, and that is your right not to get into something that you think is going to be burdensome down the road.
Right.
And then a seller has a right not to do anything either.
Absolutely.
And
they do.
I make sure that I tell everyone that it's not a time for you to renegotiate price unless there's a major issue. It's not a time for you to ask for all these things unreasonably, because
Right.
the seller has rights as well. They can
Yes.
say no, they can offer a credit, and they might be totally fine with you backing out.
Yes.
So you have to, it's a give and take. I always like to say it is a win-win once you get to that closing table.
For
you
sure.
don't want it to be a bad situation.
And I like to, explain to my clients from get-go, from the point that we're making an offer, that, if you're making a very low offer, or you're asking for a huge seller credit, to expect less in the inspection period.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so if you already went in $10,000 under asking, and you're asking for another $8,000 in seller assistance, and they gave that to you, don't expect much in the inspection.
Right.
We could certainly ask, but prepare yourself for, if there's issues with the house, I either have to make a decision to walk away or accept it.
Is it a deal breaker?
Yeah.
That's what I ask.
Yes.
Like, is this going to cause you not to buy the house? If so, we need to ask for it. We need to let them know this is very important.
Right.
And how do we work through that?
Right.
So, yeah, deal breakers.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
What's actually going to stop you from buying this house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was inspections. You want to just touch a little bit on the other things in the due diligence, and just wrap up due diligence?
Yeah, we can do that.
Insurance quotes.
Yes.
These have become
Yes.
so important in a real estate transaction. Insurance rates have killed deals.
Tripled in
Yes.
some instances.
Tripled in some instances, and they've killed deals.
Yes.
So this is extremely important. Do not get through your due diligence period without having insurance quoted.
Right.
And if your agent isn't doing it for you, or your lender isn't doing it for you, you need to be doing it.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
sure.
I like to do, as soon as someone is in love with a house, or even if they're thinking
I'll do
about
flood
it,
right away.
Right. If they're in love with it and they want to write an offer, I'm like, all right, let's get some quotes. Let's find out what this is really going to look
Yep.
like. Homeowners, flood. A lot of times, if it's in a flood zone, or even if it's not in a flood zone,
They
the
already have
agents
a policy.
will have a policy in place that can be assumed. I'm making sure I'm letting people know what the full risk premium is,
Yes.
because if we get there, I don't want anybody to be surprised.
So for buyers that don't know what that is, and most first-time home buyers don't, flood policies right now are still on the lower end if they had existing policies, but every year they go up 18% until they hit their full risk premium. So what that means for somebody that's purchasing a home, while you may be able to assume the current policy that's in place at $829 a year, you need to know that eventually it could be $5,000 a year.
Right.
So if your agent's not providing you that information, or your lender's not providing you with that information, you need to find out what that full risk premium is, because that's imperative.
Yes.
For
I
your
know.
future.
My personal house, our full risk is about $5,000. One of my listings that I have right now, full risk is about $5,000. And the difference between an AE zone and an X zone, an X zone only means that it's not required by your lender.
Doesn't mean it's cheap.
At this time. And it doesn't mean it's cheap.
No.
Because some of those are higher than AE zones.
Most of them are.
And the AE zone means that, or AH or A99, there's a lot of different ones in this area.
Yep.
Means that your mortgage company is going to require that you always carry flood insurance.
Yes.
So no matter what, you're paying that, and you're paying that additional 18% each year. But in an X zone where it's not required, those policies are still high. I have one in an X zone. Right now they pay, I think, $700-ish, but the full risk on that one's $4,000.
Yeah, I have one too right now, a listing.
Yep.
I think their premium is $700 and something right now, but their full risk is $54.
Yeah, and while I would never advise anyone to not carry flood insurance, in South, anywhere at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, not even just South Louisiana. Anywhere at this point, there's flooding everywhere. I would never advise someone that. But if you are in an X zone, that is your right to decide. But you have to understand the risk that comes with that.
Another thing that's good about an X flood policy is you aren't, while you're not required to have it for your mortgage, you're also not required to cover $250,000 for the building and $100,000 for contents.
That I didn't
You
know
can
that.
you can choose to carry whatever amount of coverage you want, which dramatically decreases your premiums.
Right.
And another thing I learned this week is if you're in an X zone and you choose to carry 80% of the purchase price of the home, if you were to file a claim, it can be paid out as cash value.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to insurance that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I'm not an insurance agent, but I
Right.
think things are changing too, and we're
For
learning
sure.
more because we're having to get more creative
Yeah.
with our clients, with our sales and
Yeah.
things. So, all right. Well, that was inspections, due diligence.
Yeah. Inspection. Due diligence in general.
Yes.
And everything that falls in there.
Yes, everything that falls in there. Next, we will get on with this series to part 4. We'll get through appraisals and hopefully to the closing.
Yeah.
So that was part 3 in a series of first-time home buyer chats, fireside chats.
Right.
And we are the Move Worthy podcast with myself, Jenny Lindley.
And Lauren Jones.
And together we have the experience to move you forward.